Hello, everyone. Today is obviously a very sad day because it is the last day of press conferences for the International Film Festival Rotterdam 2023 Tiger Competition Directors. My name is David Jenkins. I'm editor of Little White Lies magazine, UK-based film publication, and I've been invited over to speak to directors from the Tiger Competition this year. The idea for these sessions is that each filmmaker is going to come up here and speak for about 10-15 minutes, and I'm going to ask a few questions, and hopefully we're going to get a few questions from the floor as well. And yeah, we're going to cover a whole range of subjects and do nice sort of miniature deep dives into these amazing movies. Quick introduction into the Tiger Competition for those who don't know it. Competition was founded in 1995 with the aim of discovering, raising the profile of and rewarding up-and-coming international film talent. The Tiger Award is accompanied by a cash prize to be shared between the director and producer of the winning film. Equally important is the international recognition for the nominees and their works that a Tiger Competition nomination brings with it. The Tiger Awards are an indispensable backdrop for many filmmakers. It can be the final step to convince financiers to fund the next project. So first, let's also have a look at the jury members this year. So to recap there, the Tiger Competition jury includes filmmaker Lav Diaz, producer and director of the Udine Far East Film Festival, Sabrina Barchetti, film critic Alonso Diaz de la Vega, and actress and filmmaker Anasia Uziman, plus producer Christine Vachon. Together, they will choose the winners of the Tiger Award worth €40,000 and the Special Jury Awards worth €10,000. Please note that the Tiger Award winner and the two Special Jury Awards recipients will be announced on Friday the 3rd of February from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. here in the Doolan. So if anyone who is following us online via the stream on IFFR.com, please feel free to type questions for the filmmakers in the little text box under the video, and we will endeavor to get those to the filmmakers. And also, please note that if you missed previous press conferences and want to catch up with them, they're all available to stream via IFFR and on the IFFR YouTube channel. So, without further ado, today's press conference. First, we're going to be covering Playland by director Jordan West and producer Russell Schaefer. Then we have Three Sparks by Naomi Uman. Then Geology of Separation by Yossa Gasmi and Mauro Mazzocchi. And finally, Notas sobre verano by Diego Lorente. And first up, we're going to be looking at Playland. Playland is a raucous work of queer bricolage and archive documentation that conjures a time-bending night in Boston's oldest and most notorious gay bar. It tells the story, of Boston's queer community through the prism of the Playland Cafe, a unique space that was an invaluable part of many queer histories. It was a gathering space at a time when both individual and state-sanctioned violence and oppression of queer bodies was prolific. Jordan, Russell, welcome to Rotterdam. Congratulations on the film. First question I have for you, maybe something you can both answer is, how did you encounter this extraordinary place? This place that through the film we learn is a kind of foundational venue for Boston's queer scene, and one that has kind of seems to have been eradicated in many ways.
Yeah, eradicated in every way.
Yeah.
So it started out as an archival project. I was doing some digging around at the History Project, which is, one of the Northeast's largest queer repositories of archival material. And
what kind of things do they have there? Is it video
they have some documents. They have a little bit of ephemera. But, we're also talking about like a historic people who were in danger when they were being documented. So that sort of physical documentation, photographs, they're pretty sparse. And it really, I found it through the testimony of a drag queen who was prominent in Boston. Her name was Sylvia Sidney. And she was known as the Queen Bitch of Boston. She had a huge personality, and a lot of her exploits that she was talking about in her oral interviews that she was giving ended at the Playland Cafe. And I was familiar with Boston, but still, I had moved there and had started getting comfortable there, but I never heard of the Playland Cafe. I'd never seen it anywhere. And doing some digging, I learned that it would have been Boston's oldest gay bar had it survived the turn of the century. And now it's a parking garage. And that's really, the story of so many queer gathering spaces historically. And right now they're in danger across the United States. And, it's a global issue as well, the closing of these really valuable historical brick and mortar gathering spaces for queer folks. So just started doing some digging around that particular bar. And I worked in a gay bar myself. So the film is not about people going to the bar and having the night of their life. It's really about the work it takes to be a steward of one of these spaces and to earn your livelihood from the existence of this place. Yeah.
And how were you able to extrapolate the research into a kind of cinematic vision? I guess it's a very playful film in the way it kind of interprets historical fact and presents historical fact.
Yeah.
And it feels like you kind of you're giving this, you're representing the space in a way that is kind of fitting for it in its atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, I think we wanted to have like a hauntogenic approach. I think I think it was Hanif Abdurraqib said, like, I'm responsible to be a living witness to my ghosts. So what does it mean to bear witness to this history? And also, I don't know how many people here have been to a gay bar, but you have a lot of people having a lot of different experiences at the same time. You have people who are there for the first time, creating their first memories, and you have people who have been going there for decades and are reliving those past memories or sharing them with the people there. So it really is a place in which there are a lot of different histories colliding at the same time. And I think that sort of kintsugi approach of like, what can we use that's there, but how can we embellish and build on that history in a way that kind of changes or reads into the grammar of queer film and creates a new language around what archival means when there's so much archival silence, was something that we were really trying to do. Feel free to jump in if I'm not being articulate, though.
No, you're being so articulate.
Thank you.
Really articulate.
I think that to Jordan's point, that's something that we've been talking about since day one, is like, how do we, and something that we're both really interested in, I think, is about telling queer stories through deeply formally queer means. So how do you approach queer narratives, especially at a point when queer narratives do proliferate in a beautiful way through all different forms of moving image work? How do we bring the formal queerness to that conversation?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I was reading I Love Dick, Chris Cross's book, and she talks about the Minetta Lane windows. And it's like, this installation with 3 windows, and there are 3 different histories happening at the same time, but there's one figure that kind of meanders between all these different spaces. And I really thought that was at least for me, that was like a revelation moment of like, that's how I want this to be, is that all these times are going to be occurring temporally in this ambiguously simultaneous way, and allow that play to really exist.
Yeah, it does have that kind of cross-cut feel of like, it's not necessarily a history, it's a moment that where everything is happening at the same time.
Yes.
How did you, maybe between you, how did you develop that sort of the visual schema of the film and the way that the people are represented?
Yeah, as in regards to like building the characters.
And I guess fleshing out these sort of like these ghosts, as you say.
Yeah, I think we were looking at particularly particular times within the different eras of this bar's history. And I think it's kind of Gothic in that way, is that the edifice is really the main character. So you have this building in which there are different players, but really that building is a character unto itself. So, we have a young person who also, within the film, is an older person as well. So Lady Bunny playing that older iteration, to kind of see what it's like to spend a lifetime in this bar. What does it mean to spend a life in this space and the relationships that emerge? So a lot of these characters, are based on archival research and are amalgamations of historical people, along with specific fictions. So, I think working in the kitchen and seeing the friendships that were forming there, both inside the space and outside the space, was really invaluable to thinking about how to picture people. And Sunday, of course, is based loosely on Sylvia Sidney, so like who came up in the queer bar scene, and was a character unto herself, quite mischievous. There are so many Sylvia stories that have yet to be told. I hope a lot of people make work about her and make work about Boston.
Was there ever a thought that this film might have been a film about her at any point?
I think that she is an anchor point, at least for me, about what the queer history of Boston looks like and what it has become. And there's still people alive now, entering their twilight years, who know Sylvia Sidney. And there are queens who are practicing in Boston now and performing in Boston now, who fundamentally, we don't have drag families in Boston, really. It's not the same sort of entanglement that you see in other scenes. It's kind of this rugged individualism that's so very specific to the city. And I think she really embodies that. She also has such a particular reading style. Before it was very, cool to like read someone to filth, she was doing it and she was filthy. So I think, to me, that is like a cornerstone of the film, is her energy and what that means for this particular place. Yeah.
I'm going to see if there's any questions from the floor. No, none today. But I was going to ask you one about. There's a note on the Rotterdam festival catalogue that name checks, whether the writer has name checked two filmmakers, Derek Jarman and Tally Potter, and firstly, it feels to me that those feel like very relevant name checks and potential influences. I want to actually put that to you and say, what were these names that are in your head, and maybe sort of follow on by like talking a bit, because obviously Jarman is one of the great cinema production designers,
yes.
And that element specifically seems to be channeled in this film.
Oh, for sure. I feel, I don't know, humble speaking about Sally Potter in front of you.
No.
So, of course, Russell can speak towards Sally Potter's. Russell just put out a book through Queer Film Classics about Orlando. So I think, that was...
It was coming up at the exact same time that we were talking about Playland.
Yeah.
I was in the process of writing and researching about Orlando while we were working on Playland and having conversations about it. So I think those are very entangled as well, in my mind, for sure.
But of course, the sort of sartorial elements that, Jarman captures, or like Sally Potter captures, was really foundational to what we were working on, and working with Edwin, who was our costume designer, and working with Chris and the production designer to really build out this world, texturally, really build out a color scheme, was of course, I think, foundational, and also a part of queer film history and queer moving image history that I wanted to be part of. That was a conversation that was really vital to me. And making this film,
and not just the actual costumes themselves, but actually the way that you sort of build the tableau and put the bodies in the frame. That again is very key to sort of what makes Jarman and Sally Potter's work, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, having their names in the same sentence as this film, it's like
that's a win.
Very humbling.
Thank you, Rotterdam.
Yeah, I think it is something that's like, there's a Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, I think about a lot as well, and there's this sort of push for her that we, as writers, in her mind, we need to push for common sentences and like how do we evolve new languages? And the only way to do that, either I think in a written form or in a cinematic form, is to get out there and do it. Just do the sentence, write the sentence, and we'll together, by doing that, we'll create something new.
Yeah.
And so I mean, similarly feel like those reference points are so central for us. They're our mothers in terms of the common sentence.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we push that a little bit further. Somebody else takes that and pushes that further. And we sort of continue that sentence along.
Absolutely.
I hope that's what Playland
Yeah,
is doing.
I mean, definitely, like, there's just saying it now, like the wolf reference and this idea of like jumping from internal monologues seems, you know, very, very there.
Yes. We tried our best.
Yes. Well, Jordan, Russell, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to go to Three Sparks. This film in 3 parts explores traditions in rural Albania and the role of women in society. The project begins with the filmmaker's relationship to the country and moves into poetic portrayal of village life and ends with a video piece revealing villagers' active participation in their own depiction. Naomi, welcome to Rotterdam.
Thank you.
So my first question for you today is I'd love to hear the story about how this project came about. I understand that you were having made a film about Ukraine. You were in Tirana and met some people there, and things started moving from there. Am I right?
Correct. I was a juror at the International Film Festival in Tirana, and I showed films portraying village life in Ukraine. And the response of the public was kind of overwhelming. Many people approached me and asked me if I would be willing to come to Albania and make a portrait of village life in Albania. And inspired by the writing of Edith Durham, who was an English woman who traveled and documented Albania 100 years ago, I was really moved and inspired and yeah, took them up on their offer.
Why did they want that? I mean, who was it who was asking these questions? Because it seems to me like a strange thing to want, you know, like a.
I think in Albania there's a large filmmaking community, but people are interested in fiction films, in action work, and kind of romanticized work, and I don't think that there was a lot of attention being given to their own beautiful traditions. I think maybe there's a sense that they're sort of backwards, and so they didn't want to show this work themselves. Mm-hmm. And so as an outsider, I had this very privileged position of being able to look upon these traditions and with admiration rather than embarrassment.
And what was your relationship to Albania like, and your knowledge of Albania prior to embarking on this film? And did you find that by making the film, the ideas that you had were being confirmed, or?
I really knew nothing
right.
about Albania. It was sort of a black hole in my mind. I knew nothing about it, but after I was invited, I did a lot of research, a lot of reading. I looked at a lot of films. Excuse me?
What kind of things were you reading?
Well, the Kanun, for one, which is the Book of Laws, several different versions of books of laws written, again, 600-700 years ago. A lot of work by Edith Durham, looking at films of Albanian culture and just sort of trying to inform myself as best I could. This film was shot many years ago. Mm-hmm. It's taken me a really long time to finish it. So I've forgotten a lot in the meantime. But.
So I'd love to know also, in terms of the structure of the film, the sort of tripartite structure, when did that become part of the film, and is that something that arrived in the editing, or did you approach the actual filming with this kind of, you know, cut up, like sectioned, chaptered construction in mind?
My way of working is to always go into a space in ignorance, really, and with a sense of awe and wonder, and to see what happens in front of my camera, what happens to me as a human being and as a filmmaker, and to sort of let those things unfold. And that is how this film came about. While scouting for a location, a village to portray, I had this unfortunate accident, and I never intended to make a film about myself, but it became an important part of my process to talk about what happened to me and how that related to the film project. And then you see what I actually was my intention to make, which is the middle section of the film. And then you see this sort of byproduct of what the people that I was documenting, what they themselves wanted to make and wanted to be shown. So I don't really ever set out with a clear intention. I just sort of go as a blank slate and see what happens. And this is what.
And was it pretty much a sort of solo thing? I mean, or did you have a crew with you, or were you there?
No, I always work alone, and that's intentional. I feel like when I go to a new place, I go as a student, and my subject are my teachers. And so I become very vulnerable, like a childlike. I don't speak the language well. I don't have anyone to lean on to help me, so I totally depend on my subjects as my teachers. And so that gives them a certain authority, and it takes away this feeling of the camera as this all-powerful weapon, and it becomes more of a game, and I feel like there's an equaling between myself and my subjects by the way that I work.
And in terms of the film, in the way it's sort of captured, you're documenting these people, and there is a commentary through the subtitles that you add, and I'd love to hear about the sort of choice of the subtitles, and in a way you're they sort of hark back to silent cinema, and when you see subtitles come up with explanations or dialogue. It's less dialogues, but it's more sort of explanations of what's happening on the screen. Intertitles. That's the word I was looking for. And yeah, could you talk a bit about the use of intertitles and not maybe the choice of not having a narration?
So in the second section of the film, the intertitles are laid out in the same format as the Kanun, and it's actually using the same typeface from that book. And because I'm using a camera that doesn't record sound, and I'm working alone, it's very difficult for me to record sound, sync sound. So a lot of the information I have to provide afterward. And they're really sort of comments of the things that are important to me, information that I need to insert into the film that's not there. There's no sound, and I'm not making an informational documentary. So it's my voice that you see in the intertitles. And in the first section of the film, the story of what happened to my dog and myself is told in intertitles, but the intertitles are actually a direct translation of the words of the song. So there's a song, it's a little difficult to explain if you haven't seen the film, but I recount this myth, this foundation myth of the city of Skoder, where a woman is sacrificed and built into the wall of a castle. And I accidentally killed my dog, and I felt a parallel that I had made a sacrifice. So I wanted to tell that story, and the story of the woman being built into the wall of the castle Rosafa is handed down in song. So I wanted to hand this story down in song myself. So I took an Albanian folk song, and I took the words out, and I wrote my own words, translated them into Albanian, and I tried to sing them myself. That was not successful, but
I don't believe you.
My singing teacher sang the words, a Mexican woman, and actually we had the Albanian instruments made in Mexico and Mexican musicians playing Albanian music. But the translation of those words into English are what you read in the intertitles.
Right. I'd also love to hear about as well as this has a kind of, I guess, ethnographic element to it, there's also, you have an interest in the depiction of women, and it's a very matter of fact and quite sort of, and very sort of coldly descriptive, and quite objective way that you kind of you encounter that. Although I think that even so, there is a sense of the fact that you're mentioning it. There is an inherent criticism, maybe. Could you talk a bit about that side of the film?
So right from the beginning, the fact that a woman is sacrificed for the building of this fortress, it says a lot about Albanian culture, traditional Albanian culture, not modern Albanian culture, where women have a very diminished role and diminished power and voice. And I clearly wanted to reflect on that, but I don't feel that it's my right to come out criticizing it directly. So I do try to comment on it without being too heavy-handed. But there's all kinds of very subtle gender role questions that come out in the film where I'm mistaken for a man because of the fact that I arrive alone with authority and I'm not depending on a man. So I'm given all the respect that they would give a man, which is comfortable for me, but also uncomfortable at the same time. And it was a very delicate line that I was walking, because I also felt in the village that I was an example of the freedom and authority that a woman could have, and that a lot of the women had never seen before. And I felt that in a way I was giving them ideas about what they could be or what they could have that they really couldn't have. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to walk a careful line.
I'm going to get one quick question from the audience. There's a question over here.
Can you talk a little bit about working independently and how you learned or studied to be able to do such a variety of disciplinary things?
So that's. Could you talk a little bit about working alone and how you studied to learn all these kind of different disciplines that come from filmmaking?
I come from a world of craft making and cooking and gardening, and all of these things really inform my filmmaking and help me to relate to rural people, especially rural women. And in terms of working alone, I just really feel that if I were to travel and work with other people, I would be protected and I wouldn't have that same direct contact with my subject. So I really always work alone. Although I did have help at the very end with the color correcting and some help with sound and graphic design.
Naomi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much
Naomi.
for having me.
So next film is Geology of Separation. Geology of Separation explores the traumas that come of migration by following a number of men in their attempts to seek asylum in Europe. Josje, Mauro, great to meet you. Thanks for being in Rotterdam. We also have a translator here today to help out. My first question is as co-director of the film, I'd love to hear a bit about the nature of your collaboration, how you kind of came together, and how this idea for this film came, how you generated it together.
I think that we don't know how work in a different way.
Yes, and we don't know how to live in a different way. So
Right.
it's our life. It's very legata al lavoro.
So their life is very much connected to their work, with their work.
And I forget the second part of the...
Oh, and I guess like the genesis of this project and how your decision to you made a film before that, and maybe like how did this one maybe lead out of that film?
So the idea of a project is born by obsessional image, missing image. When we knew that there was somebody, switch to Italian. So quando abbiamo letto e scoperto che dopo la sparizione della neve nelle Alpi hanno scoperto dei corpi da migranti che attraversavano fra l'Italia e la Francia, e quindi è questa immagine che non esiste, che è diventata un'ossessione.
So it started off from as snow melted in the Alps, bodies were discovered of migrants who have attempted to traverse the Alps, and this image, which doesn't really exist, like remained embedded, like burned into their minds, and was the spark which gave the start to this project.
And I wondered where was the first place you went with your camera, and did you see this as a kind of a form of like documentary, like reportage documentary, where you were trying to research things as you were going?
We went first to the center for asylum seekers. It's a temporary center.
Is that the place we see at the beginning of the film?
Yes, it's a hotel, but l'hotel è diventato un centro, come ti ho spiegato, di accoglienza momentanea.
So it used to be a hotel, and it was repurposed to be run as a reception center for asylum seekers. So it's run by private.
Run by private, and it's a family of an Italian family, and they used to work with the tourists now, and the government, the Italian government, allow to the private structure to become an asylum center. And so it was also interesting to see this new career, because they became also sort of gardien de prison en italiano.
Il guardiano della prigione, come si dice?
Prison guard.
Right. And I'd love to know. So there is this idea in the film where, like, we see migrants and asylum seekers and treated in this horrendous way and objectified, and by authorities and by the press and police. And I wondered how that rounded with your presence, and how, I think you maybe approach the subject matter in a very different way, in that you're sort of allowing there's more a sense of empathy, and you're allowing the protagonists in the film to express themselves a bit more. But I love to I hope that comes across. But like, what were you thinking about your presence compared to you're talking about people who are sort of objectifying these asylum seekers, but how did you avoid that? Sorry, that was very over complex.
That it was the biggest problem of the film, and for me, I think it was a question of at first a question of distance. I say that there are two types of distance: the physical distance, but also such a internal distance that may be regard the question of image, and we have worked a lot about this internal distance.
Because there is something that I hate in film about migration, and many times I at the end of the film about documentary about migration, I am angry, really, because there is this obsession about tell me your story, tell me how you suffer and how you deserve your place here. Tell me, this is something only that concern only people coming from the south, because never this obligation to show that we really deserve to be here, that and the spectator, the viewer, that tell at the end, yes, they really deserve to be here
because they've suffered.
Yes,
a lot.
No, in Europe people travel without suffering, and in the world, the first continent, la popolazione che viaggia il più nel mondo sono gli europei, per esempio, sono i primi migranti nel mondo intero.
The population which travels most, which migrates most in the world, is coming from Europe.
And they don't suffer a lot. So how to give the place, the necessary place for them, for Abdurrahman, to talk about his reality, his situation, but not allow a voyeurist point of view. This is, and we refuse, and to ask them, we ask them privately, but there is no in the film why you are here. And because something very interesting, when you ask for your asylum seeker, there is processo.
A trial.
And you have a commission, and this commission asks you why you are here. So why at the beginning of the film, so Abdurrahman come from Libya, and they ask someone asked him, but there is the war in Libya, there is the chaos, but can you tell me in how this the war affect your life? Okay, personally.
Rhetorical.
So how to break this link and how to talk differently about migration and the representation of the migrant.
I'm going to take a quick question from the audience, actually. I have one over here.
Can you explain the importance of transferring the moments of waiting and silence to audiences of this story?
So can you talk about how you transferred the moments of waiting and silence to this story? Actually, maybe I'd like to add a little bit on that, because I think this is relevant. Maybe that refers to the editing of the film and the structure, because I think one of the things that is so intriguing about the film is the way you've edited it, the duration of shots, and I'd love to hear maybe sort of bringing in that question about the editing process.
Yes, but I answer because Yosser edit the film, so I answer.
No, I edit.
But it's true because the reality is ambiguous thing. And I think that the reality is ambiguous because it doesn't exist in herself. Nietzsche said there is not reality, we are only interpretations. So our problem was how show and how build something so ambiguous, so difficult to live, to see. And there is also a problem, a structural problem about the title, Geology of Separation. So the film has a geological structure. È concepito per strati geologici.
The film is conceived as built out of like geological strata and layers.
I see. Well, Yossa, Mauro, thank you so much for your time. We have to wrap up there, but that's been great. Thank you so much. And finally, final film for the day is Notas sobre verano. Marta returns from Madrid, where she's settling it with her boyfriend Leo, to Gien to spend the summer holidays. With her friend Eleanor, she carries out the usual summer activities, parties, beach. There she runs into Pablo, her ex-boyfriend. They meet for coffee. Their meetings continue and they become more and more frequent, so they end up talking about starting their relationship over again. Diego, welcome to Rotterdam. Congratulations on your film, on the Tiger competition.
Thank you.
My first question to you is, I'm really interested in this idea that the film depicts about, it's a story of a woman who goes back home from a kind of urban place to a rural place on her summer holidays. And I'd love to hear you talk about this kind of clash between the rural and urban that the film depicts, and the relative merits of each place.
Yeah, I think it's a situation that is pretty common in Spain, and I think in most places. People who are from a place where they feel they cannot develop their careers or their ambitions, so they have to move to big cities or the capital. In this case, she's from Asturias, a region that is pretty nice to live on, but that doesn't have many opportunities work-wise and career-wise. So she moves to Madrid, as many people her age in their 20s, early 30s have done. But she doesn't find her place. So she develops the starts of her adult life in a non-place made out of two places, but her thoughts are sometimes here, sometimes there. Her heart, where is home? I think that's the question that moves Marta and moves the film.
And assuming it moved you as well in terms of how inspiring you to write and make this film. Was there a spark that led to this film that you thought, this is the story I need to tell?
I think in this case, as almost all of the time with my films, it's not like a big idea, a big concept that comes to mind. That's something that arrives a bit later in the process. I think the origin of this film was more of a mix of small ideas, images, and a certain character that I wanted to follow that was also built up in the process, ending it up in the shooting with, when I met the actress, that for me was the perfect incarnation for Marta. And still with her, with Katia, we were building the character. So the big
How
ideas...
do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you build the character? What does that mean?
My philosophy when it comes to working with actors I feel it's better for the film to try to approach my ideas, my characters that only exist on paper and in my mind, try to push them to meet the actors and not do otherwise as you usually do. I feel like something rich comes out of molding your characters through your actors' gestures, thoughts, way of talking. So in my case, when it came to working with actors, I did that. So instead of I don't know, imposing, of course it's my film and it's my script, but instead of imposing everything, every single line, we try to build a world for us to live in, and that everyone understood everything in the world of the film. So I think the life that you see on the film is the result of this process of all of us coming together and creating this small world with our rules.
That's really interesting. I mean, one of the things that I got from watching the film was that it reminded me of the French filmmaker Eric Romer, and I think maybe the title even alludes to that a bit. But hearing the way that that where the actors were actually kind of instrumental in building the characters, that's also one of his process as well. Was he a director in your mind? Is he someone you whose work you enjoy?
Yeah, I feel humble, just as one of my colleagues said, just to have Romer and myself in the same paragraph. So, of course, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. So I feel honored that his name comes out. But at the same time, he's not. I'm a cinephile in my life, in my normal life, let's say, but I'm not so much, even if it's ironic, when I'm a filmmaker. My approach is that I have my masters, in which I count Romer, from which I study, I watch, I learn, I try to learn as much as possible. But then when it comes to making the film, I don't have anyone in mind, because I think thinking how good Romer or John Ford do this could only drive me to wrong conclusions and to making something ridiculous. So I trust the process, and I hope, I don't know, these godfathers come to eliminate us, but I don't have reference, at least consciously. Maybe unconsciously I do, in mind.
I wonder also if you could talk a little bit about your decision to have Marta as a female character rather than a male. I guess it sort of shifts the idea of any biography away, but maybe that there is a sort of stealthy biography there. I mean,
okay. So the truth is that when I first wrote this script, the male character was the main character. It's been a long time, and ever since, in 2 short films, I realized I always start with writing for the male character, then shooting the female character, because I usually talk about couples, takes over, and that's even more important in the editing. So when it came to making this film, I thought, if I'm more interested in the female character, why not for once, write for her? There's always this idea that's a bit overwhelming of trying to get into someone that's not from your condition, but at the same time, I think most common ground I know, and also from observation, and from you have to trust also that you're able to get into a mind that's different from yours, and I felt validated when women, such as here in the festival, they approved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you watch the film not knowing who the director was, you maybe assume it was a woman actually. So, can I ask if there's any questions from the audience?
Did you use an intimacy coordinator during the filming, and if not, were there any conversations or processes that you used to make sure that it was a believable scene and a safe scene for both actors?
So let me just recap that. Did you draw on an intimacy coordinator for scenes in the film? And how, if so, how did that process work?
Unfortunately, well, I don't know if I didn't, for two reasons. First, but it was the smallest one, it was for budget reasons, but mainly it was because my actors are very close friends, the two main characters. So it was like a process, even from earlier than the beginning that we started, and the conversation that we started, where they were super comfortable between them and with us. So all was very talked about and pacted and scripted. I think it was more scripted than the dialogue scenes. And we were able to, also we were a super small crew, so it was easier to create an intimacy that worked very, very, very well with them, and they were super generous. And also I checked the material with them and asked them about every single frame which they were comfortable using or not, and they approved of everything. So it was my biggest concern with the making of this film, but it was surprisingly easy to do, just thanks to them and to their generosity.
One thing that's interesting about the film, in addition to that, I guess, is there is this. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but there is this association with Marta going back to this rural region, and the rural region being associated with sex, and whereas the urban region is the opposite of that. It's it's associated with, I guess, domestic life and profession. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, it was not a big idea, a conscious idea that started the film, but then I realized that trying to be subtle, but and not to make everything like super, super closed, right? But there was all the time this idea of the north, the bright, the green, the sea, the nature, the passion, the original passion of an old love that was very important to her. And then there's the city with the traffic, the work life and routine within the couple. So it was all a part of the two worlds.
But I don't feel that you're. One other thing to add there, I don't feel that you're necessarily saying one place is good and one place is bad. That it's quite, even how it's represented.
I'm trying. It's never easy, but I'm trying to show as much as I can and not take part and not to be very insistent on anything, and just let everything out and let people read what's there and take what they need.
Diego, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Diego Llorente. And that is that for the 2023 Tiger Competition press conferences. Thank you very much to all the filmmakers who've been involved. If you follow us online and have a question, please, as I said before, feel free to type all the question into the little field below the video box, or you can send an email to press@iffr.com and we'll endeavour to respond. All 4 press conferences recordings are made available on IFFR.com and the IFFR YouTube channel. And again, to say that the award ceremony, the Tiger Award ceremony, with the 2 special jury awards will be announced on Friday the 3rd of February at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. here in the Doolan. Again, thank you to all the filmmakers present today and present over the last 4 days for their amazing contributions, eloquent discussions about the work, and hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone here, to Mary Ken and Lynn and all the technical team, and for having me. And yeah, just please, everyone enjoy the rest of the festival. Go and see all the films, and good luck to all the Tiger competition nominees. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.